For long.
One. Okay, well, I'm Ty Roberts, and I just wanted to do a brief introduction for the social media panel. Today we're going to talk about getting social with media, which is really a new application area related to television. Television's been kind of a passive medium where people are watching on television. I know we heard about interactive television, that never happened, but what is happening is television interacting with second screen applications. So actually this video we're going to roll now is going to show a little bit what I'm talking about. It's a new platform that's called MediaSync that Nielsen's developed. And so you download this application. This is an application for the Weather Channel. Grace Note's Gravity company built the application for Nielsen. Basically, the application itself allows people to run an application on a portable device like an iPad. Can we just leave the video up? It keeps fading away. I don't know where the video is. Can you guys bring the video back? What happened there? There we go. And what happens is the users tune in to basically the TV program, and the application on the iPad turns on the microphone and listens to the sound. And what that then does is allow it to synchronize with the actual TV program. Once it hears the sound of the TV program, it knows exactly what time offset it is in the program. It knows it's 1 minute 10 seconds in the program, and you immediately get related content. This application has been done for the Weather Channel, and there's actually a primetime show on the Weather Channel now, Peter Lick, and he has a show called From the Edge. And basically this lets viewers directly interact with the TV program. They do the interaction on the iPad while they're watching the TV program. And they can do things like quizzes. They can basically be queried, and all of the users of the listeners or watchers of the TV program can be interacting together at one time. And so they can do these quizzes and get real-time information. The TV broadcasting company, as well as the show producers, can watch on the internet now as their viewers actually experience the show. They've never had this kind of information where they can actually see what the viewers are thinking, query them in real time, and see what they're actually doing on a broad basis across the whole range of people listening to the show. So in this case, they were asking them an interactive poll, and you can see that they were very euphoric, which is good. This kind of a social media component also allows them to take pieces of the show and post it out to their Facebook pages. So for example, they could take clips of video or related content or information about the people in the TV program and actually blast it right out to their Facebook page and share their excitement about the TV program with the actual audience. And so this is a whole new kind of application which brings interactivity together with televised products. And you can see it here on the Facebook page. Our development company has been swamped, and Nielsen, our partner in this, has received amazing amounts of inquiries from television companies all over the world to basically understand how they can build an application that directly integrates with a television program. And there's no reason this has to be TV only. This can be run off of a DVD or a Blu-ray disc or streaming VOD content. Really all that matters is that the device synchronization information is embedded within the video content. And so that's really all it does. So thank you very much. I'm going to get right to the panel now. Thanks a lot for letting me talk to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ty. Next up, we're going to invite Adam Mirabella and his panel to take the stage. Adam is Global Director of Digital Marketing at Nokia, and he will be joined on stage with Thomas Crampton of O&M Asia Pacific, Nigel Harper of ESPN Star Sports, Nick Forbert, Interactive Advertising Bureau, Razmik Hovagmian of Viki.com, and Doug Frazier of Facebook.
No one told you life was gonna be this way. Your job's a joke, you broke, your love life's the old way. It's like you're always stuck in second gear when it hasn't been your day, a week, a month.
All right. Thank you very much for having us up here. We're spending a lot of time in the green room talking about social networking, social media. So hopefully we'll enlighten you guys, and at the end we'll have questions. Hopefully you guys will enlighten us back. You know, a couple of themes I want to put out there as we're talking is this whole, it's really a new approach and a new business opportunity for companies to get their heads around social networking and social media. So a couple of themes out there are transparency, responsiveness, which includes really listening and then being much more in a dialogue rather than a monologue with your consumers, which is a pretty big change up. And then collaboration. So I want to put those in the backdrop, and we'll sort of tap into those as we're talking here on the panel. But it's important to note those things because those are easy things to say. They roll right off the tongue. But for companies and for brands and for artists and celebrities, these are difficult changes in interacting with consumers. So I just want to put that out there. So I think what we'll do, why don't we start off, Thomas, we'll start with you. Why don't we just go down the line real quick, and everybody can just say what they do and give some perspective on how they're looking at social networking from the point of business that you manage.
My name is Tom Crampton. I run social media at Ogilvy in Asia Pacific, based out of Hong Kong. We have a team stretching across every market in the region. And we help companies to understand, strategize, and execute in social media in Asia.
I'm Doug Fraser. I run the measurement solutions practice for Facebook in Asia Pacific, and we're really, really focused on helping our largest partners understand the true value they get from their presence on Facebook. So that's through consumer insights or ad effectiveness or brand tracking over time.
My name is Razmik Hovagimian. I'm the co-founder CEO of Viki. We are a place where I can watch TV series and movies from around the world in 156 languages. And we are actually a social experiment ourselves because we have 500,000 people that take our content and subtitle it overnight in 40, 50 languages. So we're bringing the fans and the content together.
Great. I'm Adam Mirabella, the Global Director of Digital Marketing for Nokia, and my job is to advance the social media opportunities for Nokia and our partners.
Nigel Harper. I look after the ESPN player, which for those of you overseas you may know as ESPN3 in the US, a long-form video platform which is now rolling out across Asia. It's in 28 countries, and we work very closely with ESPN International on a global platform combining long-form video, digital rights, information, stats, and of course social media.
And I'm Nick Forbett. I run a digital consultancy here. But here I'm to speak on behalf of the IAB, which is your trade association. So we're basically here to do whatever you need us to do to make your business more successful.
Great. So Doug, let's start with you because I think it's a great place to start. We're here, obviously, this conference is about this marketplace in Asia. Tell us about social networking and Facebook in this marketplace, and is it different? If it is, what's different about it here than it is in other parts of the world, and what's the evolution?
Sure. Yeah, I think on the user side, the core value proposition remains the same across all markets. People want to connect with those that they're closest with. They want to share their ideas, their activities, their photos, and I think that remains true across all the markets that we see, and we see similar levels of engagement across all those markets. But the way in which users are accessing and using social network is slightly different. We see a much higher mobile penetration in Southeast Asia, and we have so many mobile-only users in this region that I think that's the biggest opportunity going forward, is really trying to capture those folks that are on those feature phones out there.
Right, so the entrance point and the entrance ramp for a lot of consumers, ones that are here already, and then also new consumers that are starting to get onto the web, will be from a mobile point of view, which is going to be, it's just a different experience and a different interaction, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's the opportunity for brands to really have that engaging conversation. At least on Facebook through the news feed on those phones. But just like you said, it's a very different entry point into social networking for those users.
Right, and so Thomas, for you, obviously, you deal with a lot of different brands, a lot of different companies. What are the questions that are coming up to you? And what are your customers looking at from you to try and help build their business and their presence in social networking?
Companies that are looking to build their business in social media in Asia, the first thing they're trying to do is understand the complexity of what's going on in Asia. Asia is one of the most complex parts of the world in many respects. You've got so many languages, cultures, levels of economic development. Add on top of that the digital ecosystems that exist in all these different countries. Even when you have two countries of a very similar level of economic development, Korea, Japan, you'll find very different ways that people are engaging, ways that people are socializing online. So the first thing that we're helping people do is try to understand what's going on out there and how they can begin executing there. And then we sort of go through various phases of understanding of social media and what can be done with social media. At the end of the day, however, the real thing that we're trying to do is not have necessarily a PR or marketing take on it. At the end of the day, we're trying to help people transform their businesses to include social as a very fundamental part of what they are doing.
Right. And we were talking about that, you know, backstage. We were all just chatting because we love this topic. But we were saying that a lot of people think that social media is this sort of marketing channel. And, you know, you get the social media expert and you plug that into the organization. And that's really not, I think we were all agreeing backstage, that's not really true, right? I mean, Nick, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting kind of situation that we're in. I was very lucky to work with Yahoo about 10 years ago in the UK, where the development of the UK market was very similar to the stage that the Singapore market is here at the moment. And one of the big difficulties that we had over there at Yahoo was trying to persuade people that it wasn't just press, cinema, radio, outdoor TV, online. We weren't just another channel. And that in fact, online, the internet actually had elements of press, elements of TV, elements of outdoor, and elements of radio. I think the really interesting thing with social in that context is that actually people are tending to do the same thing now, but within online. So now online is getting segmented into channels that are display media, search media, mobile, and social. But actually social stands out in its own right because social has elements of display, has elements of search, has elements of mobile.
Exactly.
And so, it's almost a kind of macrocosm in its own right. And I think that's a fascinating challenge that we all have to face.
Yeah. And I think that actually, Thomas and Doug, you guys were pretty passionate talking about that really the strategy needs to be built first for the company, right? What they're trying to get done, what are their goals, or what are their objectives, and social gets woven into that. So talk a little bit about that, because you're talking from a ground-up perspective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of clients that come to us and ask, what should my social media strategy be? And we don't think that's the right approach. It should be more about what are your business objectives or what are your marketing objectives, and then how can you leverage social media to amplify what you're doing in other channels or to deliver messages just in the social media channel. So we don't think, like we're all talking about, it's this separate budget or this separate approach to marketing. It really should be woven into your overall marketing solution.
I mean, we find that the most powerful executions in social media are those where there's a social kernel. The social is at the center of what you're trying to do, but social media is just one aspect of it. It brings in television, it brings in print, it brings in all of these different ways of touching consumers, because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is inspire action, sort of get a momentum going that allows people to react and interact with a brand in a new kind of a way. And this understanding of how social works is crucially important when you're translating into a new domain, and that's one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing, is helping somebody build what is the social personality of your brand. Sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and this idea of moving to a conversation, as I mentioned earlier, it's very difficult for companies to move into that mode of working and interacting with consumers. In fact, if you look at a lot of social media, sometimes it's held inside the comms organization, right? And companies have used to have very tight restrictions around comms, who would speak when, etc. But the point of the matter is with these brands that these conversations are happening anyway with consumers. They're having them. So the question is, how do you empower and how do you enlighten the entire organization to be part of that in a meaningful way, right? You don't want people just out there spewing, meaningless stuff for consumers. But if there's a touch point that can really make a difference to the consumer and pull them into the conversation, that's what we want to try to do. Let's talk a little bit about video, because at ESPN, one of the things you're working on, as you mentioned, is the player, right? So let's talk about how that sort of works into social and how you took that project and how it became social in nature.
I kind of think some of the things that we need to remember about the way ESPN Player is putting out videos, that it's the long form, long engagement process. So ESPN Star.com has had video presence in terms of clip media, in terms of highlight material for many years now, and that's actually becoming more pervasive, and it's probably a good word to begin to introduce as well. Social media and those social touch points need to be across all of the areas of a product. So video is becoming pervasive, not just in our news and reportage website, ESPNstar.com, but also within the ESPN player here in Singapore, in Malaysia, and going out elsewhere. So as a global platform, what we're trying to do there is say, you're going to be here for 45 minutes, maybe longer, enjoying a sporting activity. And 70% of our viewing is of live sports activities, even on a global basis. So I will share in the coming weeks Wimbledon tennis tournaments live, and they will be watched by people on a global platform, a common global platform across 28 countries at this point in time, where we promote not just the video engagement and the common sporting event, but also the opportunity to go on there and start building up a Facebook comment and be able to share those with other people on your other community elsewhere. So very important to make it pervasive.
Yeah.
And we're playing off the opportunity that we have at ESPN about having long form video material. So you drop in, come out, you have a chat, you have an update, you go away, you come back again.
Yeah, the other word that comes to my mind is also iteration, that you need to start with something and then build on it. And I think that's really important when people start thinking about their social media approach towards business. You're gonna start something, you're gonna learn something, and you're gonna build on it and see where it takes you from there. You know, you're gonna iterate, you're gonna continually iterate on that. So I think that makes sense. Now, for you, Razmig, you tell us about, because you characterize your your organization as basically a social media experiment in and of itself, right? And it's tying fans to video. So explain how that works and why you characterize that as a social media experiment.
Sure. So we license content from around the world. And as soon as we put the content up, we have a wiki-like feature where you can start subtitling it, translating it. That's why it's called Wiki. It's video plus wiki. The wiki element of it is 500 people on average translate one video. It's collaborative. Each word they subtitle has its own history. So they police each other. It gets to a point where very quickly they can translate in a new language. And the interesting thing that's happening on the experiment side is people that are consuming this content are not native to it. So people that are watching Korean dramas, 70% are not Asian. They're African American, they're Latin American, they're Caucasians. Yep. So it's market making in a sense. So we're getting the fans to interact with the content. We're taking some pirates and creating them recovering pirates, if you will. Right. And it's expanding the size of the pie. So that's the piece. Get the content in front of its fan, let them interact with it, and let them localize it in our case, and you grow the market.
And there's one of the words I said earlier, collaboration, right, which you said just came into it. So you're enabling that collaboration between fans, right?
Precisely.
And what you were talking about earlier is really about keeping the engagement going, right? And that with the player, the ESPN player, that you guys are essentially finding better engagement, longer engagement, and consumers really wrapping their arms around this experience.
Yeah, I mean, one of the opportunities you get as a rights sort of custodian or holder is the ability to kind of leverage those off. So when we're looking, as we just recently launched with the Formula One, not only can you watch the qualifying and the practices and the actual main race, we're offering a parallel feed which gives you a driver's eye view. That's not something you normally get hold of on a broadcast environment. Similarly, earlier this year, the Australian Open tennis, we had up to 15 different camera feeds from different courts. So if you had a particular athlete you were following and you wanted to chat, Twitter, blog, comment, you were in a position to say, hey, I'd just seen this happen. So the live aspect is very, very important, but trying to bring that in a much wider context, not just the one feed you're used to. The glory of online is we can do lots of it.
Yeah, and everybody's doing that, right? I mean, anybody that has a child in their life, a kid in their life that's under the age of 18 sees unbelievable multitasking around all these experiences, and it's nonstop, right? It's the texting and the IMing and the receiving their, the messages in their Facebook inbox or whatever it might be, writing on somebody's wall while they're on the phone with somebody else. It's really quite incredible, actually. And most of us here, we're here at Digital Matters because we're closer to that. We're early adopters. That's why we're sitting in this room. So we have some sensibility about that. We have some sense of that and some idea about that. But really, there are consumers that are just finding their way around this. What are you seeing, Nick, around the trends? As an association. So you have a lot of organizations that belong to your association, belong to the association. So what are you seeing? What trends are breaking out?
I mean, as a trade association we're there to represent our members and obviously pursue the things they're interested in. And within that context, you get an enormous amount of kind of new ideas, new concepts coming in and going out all the time. And, to be honest, we're very dependent upon whatever the consumer is attracted to and what they're willing to invest money in. I think as an association, we're probably less focused in the minutiae of the idea itself, but more in actually the process of commercializing this. So when you look at what a trade association does, we're out there to engage, we're out there to educate, we're out there to inform, and then finally we're out there to make doing business easy. So, if you're going to summarize from our perspective as a trade association what's going on in the market at the moment, what's actually going on is there's a hell of a lot out there. It's incredibly complicated, and we need to find a way out there to educate at the moment. From my point of view, and from the IAB's point of view, and certainly from a global perspective, one of the things that really stands out, and especially talking to you guys here today, is how willing, particularly the guys from your companies, ESPN, Facebook, and many other companies out there, are actually willing to take a step back and instead of just trying to sell their product, actually say, I want to be closer to the client, find out what they want to do, and then I want to use my portfolio to demonstrate to them that we can achieve those goals. And so for me, that's the fantastic side of social media at the moment.
Right. So I think what you're saying is it's hard for these companies, for all companies, to make this move into this realm. It's a whole new place. And if you've got one or two people in the organization, Facebook, of course, is an exception because everybody's living in social media all the time. But I think most organizations have a small juggernaut of people that know this and understand it or are passionate about it, right? People like us sitting here on stage. But then you have to try to spread that out. And I think that you're saying that's hard to do sometimes and get that whole organization feeling that and understanding that.
Yeah, absolutely. And more importantly, it's actually very difficult to find people who have the knowledge of all of these kind of different products in one place, in one person. So from our point of view, when it comes to education, especially with some of the new social media products, we're very dependent on documentation, which means that, it's not just about, giving people the opportunity to go to your website and see these things, but it's actually a question of actually writing down, give us a one-page summary of your product, communicate what the benefits of this product are, and more importantly, make it easy for advertisers, to access this in order to commercialize it, to reach out to their consumers.
Right. That's a great point. Let's talk about the commercialization here and the ad piece of it. So I think, Thomas, give us your point of view because there are so many digital digital models that have been around with advertising, and many of them have fallen short. And there's been sort of, people have felt like there should be more happening, whether it's music or books or whatever, and other ways to monetize through advertising. Tell us why you think social marketing would be different, or will it be different? I mean, how are you going to use that, and how's it playing out in the marketplace?
Well, for one thing, on one level, the group that I run, we don't really believe in advertising.
Okay.
Sorry, wrong conference, maybe. But what we try and do is build strategies or build approaches for a brand or a product that makes people want to engage or get involved with it. We look at advertising as an accelerant, something that will add momentum or kick off something. And it's really about giving things. That's the Viki model is a very interesting one because you're bringing content to people that is very relevant to them. And I think that's really what brands and companies need to do. It's really about giving to people. It's not about broadcasting to them, shouting at them, or taking something from them. It is engaging them and giving them something of value, and then finding a way to amplify what you are doing.
Right.
And one model of that, maybe hand it over to Doug here, that we find is very interesting, is a recent innovation at Facebook called Sponsored Stories, where when, sorry, I'm pitching your company here, having said I was anti-advertising, which if I have been involved with a brand and I said I'd liked a page, it will then, Sponsored Stories allows you to show, as a brand, to promote that, to show that this person has liked something. I don't know if I explained that correctly, but really what we view this as is using advertising as an accelerant of sorts.
Yeah, we call that word of mouth at scale, or usertising, I think is what someone wanted to call it internally. But just to kind of echo the points up here, a lot of clients come to us and want to talk just about ads, and we want to take a step back and say, sure, we can try and solve some of your marketing objectives on Facebook, but let's look back and try and see if we can solve some of your business objectives. So in the case of Viki, you want to try and translate all of those videos. Why don't we crowdsource that and enable our fans to do that? Not only will we get the translation for free, but now the users of Viki are going to feel that much more ownership in the brand.
Right.
And that's where you can start strengthening that connection. And that's what you're saying. Have the users really feel like they're a part of the process. That's going to build that loyalty over time. So not just advertising objectives, but really your business objectives and leveraging social media for that.
Now, I want to play off of that word you said, ownership, because that's a big change now when you think about social networking. Companies are used to owning their message. They're used to owning this conversation, or I shouldn't say conversation, it really is just a message. They're used to owning the push. This is what we're going to say about our company. And what you're saying there is that it goes back to that word I said earlier in the backdrop, it's a conversation and it's a dialogue that's taking place. And really, it's co-ownership now between your, the fans of your brand, right, your consumers and your organization. And there's co-ownership there, which is a new twist, I think. Yep. So Razmik, tell us about what's the business model with you guys? I mean, are you employing advertising? How are you guys making it work?
Yeah, so in most of the markets we're in, we have pre-roll ads. So you see 30-second ad, just like you see on Hulu. But we are also experimenting with microtransactions because sometimes we get the crazy emails that say we will pay $50 for a virtual scarf of Yon Sama.
Right.
They want to put that next to their profiles.
Yeah.
So we realize that if you give them something of value, let's say you get it on an earlier window or in a higher quality, they'll be willing to pay in small packets, 20 cents, 30 cents.
Right.
That's a model we're experimenting with. Right now, it's effectively a TV network. We just happen to be on the PC. Our ratings are like TV-like. We're getting hundreds of thousands of people in country watching something. So we're going after TV advertisers to put those 30-second slots on our site.
So I think that, you bring up a good point. The other thing that's trending right now is this idea of gamification. And if you look at badges, if you look at, leaderboards and all these other things, it's a way to continue that engagement with the consumer and make them want to check in, right? Make them want to be part of it, just to see, oh, wait a minute, Nigel did this, I did this. If I can get to this place and I'm gonna outdo him, or virtual goods or whatever it might be, it just makes it more fun and more interesting. So I think that's another trend that's happening. Are you guys using that at all at ESPN?
We're beginning to do that, perhaps not out here in Asia so much, but in the US with applications that run alongside a live sports event, tone marked in some way to reveal a new piece of backstory. Clearly, even in the non-video domain where we have live reporting, transfer windows that are opening or closing, and the frenzy of activity that goes on as players are exchanged and bought and traded. Having editorial staff who are knowledgeable and can convey an opinion and provoke responses. So where in a normal kind of piece of editorial you may see 4, 5, 6 kind of comments on something and they'd be fairly benign, I love that, I agree or disagree. In a styled textual environment, we were seeing sort of 800 or 900 comments coming back on something, coinciding then with the subsequent impressions, so 500,000 impressions, because there is a compelling story being commented upon. So the advertising thing is both ways. I'm promoting my product through good editorial and availability, but I'm actually then getting the social dialogue coming back, which is then rewarding advertisers who are appearing on our platforms. Right. We saw a great example of that earlier this year with the Cricket World Cup, where one of the difficulties we had was over-delivering on ad impressions when you suddenly get 10 million impressions on a cricket match, because you're giving it away for free in India on a World Cup moment. It's an interesting ride to be taking.
Yeah, and how does the editorial play a role in what you're doing? Because that's what makes it interesting. The editorial, though, is being built up not just by you, but also by the fans, correct?
Yeah, so there is that dialogue going on, and we will increasingly see that as the editors are sitting there in the wee hours of the morning, very often with European or US sports,
right,
and promoting that dialogue. And I think this is one area where I guess we have some luxury in that we do have that global environment to play off as people are following around a sporting event and picking up the news. I often say one of the things that we want to be able to do when we go into the office, I want to be up to the minute with my sporting facts, my social dialogue, so around the coffee machine or the water cooler, I've got something interesting for the morning's chit-chat.
Yep, exactly. So I guess I want to ask for Nick and Thomas, obviously Facebook and Twitter are, paramount and they're on everybody's mind. What other tools are you guys seeing?
Depends what markets you're in, not China.
Yeah, exactly. Fair enough. So my question, that's a great point. So what other tools are you seeing out there for social networking that are making a difference that people should know about and experiment with and play with?
a huge number, and it really depends what you're trying to do. And we've actually spent a lot of time gathering together these what we call social media bullseyes, which show the local equivalents of what are important in social media in a given market, as opposed to the globally known platforms. And even when you do have the local equivalent, it is not always the same, and it doesn't always work out as the exact equivalent. If you look at Youku and Tudo versus YouTube, Youku and Tudo being video platforms hosted online in China, on the face of it, they're very similar. But if you look at their functionality, the way that they operate, they're very, very different. They're more like a TV channel, a cable channel, or Hulu, than they are like a YouTube. So I think it's dangerous to have a one-size-fits-all approach. We find that we will use different strategies and platforms, not just for the same client, but for the same product for the same client, depending on what we are trying to accomplish and how we're trying to accomplish it. So it really is a very complex area anyways, and within Asia you've got this higher level of complexity.
Right. And Nick, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think the local question is kind of the really interesting one there. I mean, just again, okay, so my focus is always Singapore, right? So, you know, here, 95% of the inventory that's generated by consumers online in Singapore is foreign. So, you know, the question here for Singapore is what can we do and what can we invest in order to generate some homegrown products that we can actually take to the world. And I think when you look at social media within that context, actually most of the success within homegrown products here in Singapore has actually been in social media. So you've got kind of, you know, you go back kind of 4 or 5 years ago, and it's kind of stemming out of bulletin boards and people running them out their back bedroom, and you know, some of the guys are still doing that with things like Club Snap, for example. But then conversely, you've got Cozy Cot, which, you know, when I came here 4 years ago, was basically a bulletin board for, you know, women with very young children, and that was essentially what it was, and from my point of view, quite a tedious product. But they've managed to actually migrate it and add in so much more functionality, but more importantly, take it away from just being an online social media product and take it out into the real world. So if you look at Cozy Cot as a brand here in Singapore at the moment, and we really should be kind of flying that flag, it's not just about the website and the functionality they offer their users, it's about the fact that they have 8 buses that they take out to major shopping malls every Saturday afternoon, and they give product giveaways from the back of it. They've done something which is quite unusual, which is go from online into print press. They now have a newspaper which is contributed to and built by their users and distributed, and it gives something, you know, very tangible to get hold of. And it's a great extension of that brand. People always said to me that, you know, online or kind of internet media will never be successful until it can do the 3 Bs, which is bed, bog, and bath. Bog being loo, for people not familiar with that language. You know, for me, what Cozy Cot's done there is managed to kind of take that brand out there and put it in the 3 Bs, and I think that's a fantastic achievement. I'd really like to see Singapore. I saw Robert here from the IDA earlier, and the MDA here as well. I'd really like to see, and I know that they would really like to see, a lot of investment in social media products here in Singapore, because we do have the novelty, we do have the investment, and we do have a community that's intensely kind of tightly knitted together, and that's a big bonus for social media.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you know, the people running the show here just a heads up. If you want to get microphones ready, we'll take some questions in a couple of minutes. So get that all set up, and I guess if you have a question, throw your hand up. But Doug, let's talk about this idea about social networking and social media. If you look back in 2004, 2005, there were big topics out there like podcasting, like RSS feeds, etc. And not that those things aren't being utilized today. In fact, they are being utilized, but they're all part and parcel of the overall marketing plans that organizations put forward. So my question is, you know, this idea about social networking, from your perspective, you know, it's a hard question, obviously, because you're with the main company, but is this a trend? Is this something that's you know, hugely scaling right now, and then in 3 years it's just in the background and part of what we do every day, or do you see it as a separate identity to some of these other digital tools that have been out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the numbers speak for themselves. You know, our company is still growing very quickly across the world. You know, so we're doing quite well on the growth side. But in terms of, is there a stickiness, and will social networking be around for years to come? I think that the difference between social networking and the RSS feeds and podcasts is that there is that the two-way engagement. So with podcasts and RSS feeds, it's only one way. And when you have that two-way engagement, you get the network effect. So you have that Metcalfe's law, which says the value of a social network is equivalent to the number of nodes squared. So as it gets bigger and bigger, the value doesn't increase linearly, it increases it increases as the square. So,
Right.
so I think that's one reason why that it's going to stick around. And then for Facebook specifically, there are some things that we try and do. You know, we've opened up our platform with our APIs. You can build on our platform on Facebook.com, or you can build through Facebook Connect or through the Open Graph. You can do that on your own website. And those are the ways that we're trying to stay relevant. As we become a larger company, won't be as nimble as a small startup of a couple people, but we're hoping that by integrating our social graph into those products, we can still be on the cutting edge technology that way.
Right. No question. You guys have been pushing that boundary, which has helped you get to the point you're at on a continual basis over the last couple of years. That's very true. So, is there a question out there that somebody wants to ask? If they've got the mic, I don't know. Go ahead. Should be. Give it another shot.
Hello. Yeah.
There you go.
Question for Doug. See, we are in an industry now because of the nature of the structure of industry. The tremendous opportunity in social and digital media is being underutilized, mainly because of the split between the creative agency and the actual media planning unit. Somehow they are slightly more dissociated from the brand than when we joined the industry. Now, the question I want to ask Doug is, there are certain indices which the industry now needs, like instead of a TRP, reach, etc., you need involvement index, time spent, compelling. It's a degree of engagement. Unfortunately, a lot of the media planners that I'm meeting nowadays in the region do not understand these brand values. They are just trying to compare, hey, TRPs, reach, etc. But to understand the value of, say, a Facebook, it is the ultimate. If you have a, let's say, Maslow's hierarchy of media, it is giving self-esteem. Right. Now, that kind of understanding, it needs a different kind of measurement. It's more of a qualitative measurement. Maybe it can be quantified. So let's say an involvement index, a time compelling index, and these are the areas. We need to do a lot of proselytization, for want of a better word, so that these opportunities can be properly utilized. Maybe the Nikes and the Unilevers of the world are doing it because they have thinkers. But the average advertiser in the region is lacking it because they don't have access to these tools.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I said that I run the measurement solutions practice here in Asia Pacific, and that's really custom measurement to try and address some of those issues that you're talking about. Unfortunately, the custom nature of it only allows us to offer that to really our most strategic clients, you know, 20 or 30 brands worldwide. It's definitely a hole in understanding, I think, the true value for some of the medium and smaller advertisers. What we're trying to do in the meantime is to build up the insights that we can provide in terms of a brand's page on Facebook. So we have our Pages Insights product that we put a lot of time into over the past couple months, and I think over the next couple of quarters, you know, there'll be a lot more functionality that's going to be available there. But you bring up a great point that it is something that it's a hole in improving the value.
I absolutely agree. I think you're raising an extremely important issue, which is measurement. And if we can't show value, you know, and from my perspective, if we can't show value that we're bringing to clients, frankly, they shouldn't be using us. We need to be able to show the value of what social media is. So how do we do that? First of all, I push back on a lot of the traditional media measures. A lot of them are in place and used simply because they have been used for so long, and they don't really make an awful lot of sense, frankly. But with social media, what we do is we try and break it down along a classic sales funnel: reach, preference, awareness, action, you know, in the sort of the classic sales funnel, dividing out, and in each one categorizing the sort of goals that we'd be trying to reach. In awareness, is it unique monthly views of a website, for example? If we're getting to preference, how have we changed the conversations online over time in terms of the portion of positive conversations versus negative, the share of voice of a brand? In terms of action, it might be the actual click-through rate. And I think that we're actually arriving at a more robust level of measurement, and I think it's absolutely crucial if we're going to get anywhere with social media and have a credible offering for people to actually use.
But it sounds like the metrics have got to catch up with the business needs and the concepts that people have in their minds about where they want to go.
Well, the ultimate measure is the U.S. dollar. Well, or Singapore dollar. Maybe the renminbi soon. But it's all about trying to find business value. So at the end of the day, that's our ultimate goal. But in attaining that, we want to have as many measures along the way not only so that we have a baseline from where we're going to, but where we can see what's working. And to be honest, when we're doing a lot of these campaigns, suddenly we will find some aspect of it that's succeeding that we had not expected at all. If we weren't measuring that aspect of engagement or this sort of tenor of the conversation, we wouldn't have realized what we were changing.
Which speaks to the iteration thing again. Put your hand up if you got a question. Doug, you wanted to play off of that. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I agree, Tom. I think one of the things we're trying to do right now is build up case studies. So we have these many case studies that prove that there is value for some of these larger advertisers. And so we think that's really the way in the short term that we're going to prove that the investment is worth it, to hold our platform accountable. But in the longer term, there needs to be a lot of thinking in the industry about how are we going to measure this value going forward for all advertisers.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did just want to touch on that slightly. I mean, it's intensely frustrating on the measurement side, and especially kind of when you're working at agencies. I do also think to a degree that we need to forgive ourselves a little bit and try and kind of remember to put these things in context. When I look over the last kind of 20 years or so and look at campaigns and wonder what, as a percentage of my marketing spend, what is going on media, what's going on production, what's going on research, kind of the research cash is about 1%, right? So, this here in Singapore, it's a $100 million industry, so that means that the most amount of money that could be washing around in the market to do research is about $1 million. But then bear in mind that that's split between 500 different advertisers or 1,000 different advertisers who are all spending, 10, 20 grand a pop, and you've only got a couple of $100 sat around to actually do that research. We work really hard with research with the IAB, and our absolute conviction is that possibly not so much in the US and certainly with big companies like Facebook, but over here the only way that we're going to deliver that kind of research and the information that you're looking for is if we act together as an industry. I think we need to start somewhere, and I think one of the really frustrating challenges for this conversation is that if we look at online marketing expenditure, what proportion of all of that is going on social media? And I don't know what that figure is. I've probably got an idea, but it's not very big.
Very low. Yeah, it's very, very low.
Which means that if we're going to focus on research in the online industry, it's unlikely to be focusing on those key metrics that you're talking about in social media at this stage. So I understand the frustration, but we're actually going to have challenges addressing that in the short term here in Southeast Asia, simply because of the size of the market.
What question do we have out there? Anybody? No. Good. Okay. So let's got a few more minutes here. Let's ask the question, go right down the line. What word of advice, if you had to focus everybody in here on one thing that you think is important for them to really get their head around for social networking, what either word or phrase would you use?
Training.
Training?
If you look at any major company here, what's the biggest block on getting involved in social media is I don't have anybody to do it.
Okay.
Training.
Nigel?
Say lowering the barrier so that when you do have the good idea, enable people to be able to get in there, not have complex login, not be too desperate to go and scrape more emails and more other stats about. Just get the experiment running.
Okay. Razmik?
I'd say retention. I think you can get a lot of audience, but you can lose them very quickly. So social media helps you get a lot of people.
Yep.
But if you don't have a good product or if you don't have the right hooks in there, a lot of them will leave. So don't ignore retention when you're thinking about your social media strategy.
Okay.
I would say don't just check the box, have a strategy up front.
Right. So strategy from the ground up.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was saying before, companies come to us and want to have this new social media presence.
Right.
And it's like a new puppy.
They want you to wave the wand, right?
Yeah, exactly. Wave the wand. It's like a new puppy. It's shiny. It looks really sexy on your yearly reviews. But then you have to feed the puppy and take care of it, and that investment is something that needs to be thought through ahead of time.
We all love puppies. Okay, go ahead.
Great, I got the last one, all five.
There's
so many ways to take that, but I think that really finding a way to find your brand voice and what your company really means in this new context. And I think that it goes to a lot of what everybody in the panel has been saying, and in particular, finding a way to engage with your audience. Find that social key. What is the aspect that makes all of your customers excited about your brand? They're paying money for stuff. Just to engage with you online doesn't cost them anything. Find that thing that can activate them, make them engaged, and keep them relating to your brand in a new way on this fantastic new platform that fundamentally should be transforming your business entirely. And from our perspective, if we're not having late night calls with the CEO, there's a problem.
Right.
We need to be having problems at a high level, because otherwise we're just doing something that is superficial and meaningless. Social media is transforming businesses, and if it is not transforming your business, you're really missing a huge opportunity.
Right, exactly. And I was going to use the word relevance. I think, you know, when you think about social networking and social media, you need to be thinking about the relevance and the conversation that you're having and making it relevant to that core constituency that you're hitting on. And I think a lot of times in social networking, we talk about the friends and then the friends of the friends, and that's all true. That's how you get the scale. But just as Nigel was saying earlier, sometimes you can get an incredible amount of discussion and incredible amount of passion from a small group of people that are going to make a huge difference, right, in your business. So I think relevance is really important here in how we approach that.
They'll be rewarded and they'll come back again because they had a positive experience.
Right. Exactly. Anything, real quick, one last question around the panel. Anything you're reading around social media that you think is interesting for people to pick up or they might want to look at? Thomas, a white paper or a book or something? Anything?
The usual suspects, Mashable, TechCrunch, nothing. But I mean, one thing I'd like to add very quickly on this, which is that social media, and this is something we've found, social media can't make a bad product a good product. And companies need to really consider on their side, you know, when they come to us and say, well, they're saying bad things about us. Well, first of all, improve your product. Make it better. We can't make a bad product good.
Right.
We can help conversations about good aspects of
Although
your
you
product.
could unearth what are the things that are frustrating a consumer about a bad product, which could then help you, right, help you right the ship.
Yeah, exactly. And we've often found these situations of negativity are relatively easy to address if you really do take it seriously. It's a core group of people who, some of them might have real issues that are correct. I mean, they are having a problem that you need to address.
Right, exactly. Doug, anything?
Yeah, there was a white paper actually just about a year ago, and it's a bit dated by Nielsen, that talks about the effectiveness of social context when people are seeing ads. And so we see something like, I think it's 68% increase in ad recall, 2 times increased message awareness, and 4 times purchase intent when ads are served with the number of friends or who those friends are of yours that have connected to that brand before. So I think that's a really effective white paper.
Okay. Razmi, anything?
Just from 2 days ago on TechCrunch as well, I saw an article on Blippi, and the lesson learned was they went overly social.
Okay.
They tried everything.
Overly social.
Overly social.
Really?
They went a little bit too much.
I was guilty of that in college. I think I was overly social, but that happens. Okay. Anything?
I think some of the papers I've seen on engagement, and they touch on always with the measure-rounds, and I think to the question that was asked, how do we interpret what these new measure-rounds are? Yeah. And the more we can socialize and talk about it at a business level, the more we're going to start having a new common language as to what engagement actually means to a consumer, and then us in a monetary and a commercial sense.
Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. IAB social media best practice guidelines. Let's agree what's good. Let's agree how we're going to judge it, and let's make it happen. And if you haven't got a copy, nick@iab.sg.
And I'm currently reading Facebook Era by Clara Shih, S-H-I-H. It's not just about Facebook, it's about social media overall and building that strategy from the ground up. So I think that's quite interesting. Hey, let's give our panelists a hand. They came in from far away to share some ideas with you. Thanks so much for your attention.